Hi, ma'am. So I think you can switch to the first slide. The first slide, let's start with the first slide. Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll be adding participants to join the call shortly. Thank you very much, and good luck to every one of us. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Fashionomics Online Accelerator Program. Please kindly settle in as we prepare to start the session.
Hi, everyone. So it's another exciting session, and today we're going to be looking into everything that concerns your business, the costing and the pricing. Omlabaki, do you have more things to talk about first, or do you want me to go straight in?
Okay, so basically, I'll just remind everyone of the ground rules for the session. Please do not forget that we have basic ground rules that guides us for the session. So I'll just read that out very fast, shortly for everyone to hear. So please note that you switch on your camera if you can. You use the chat box to ask your questions. Raise your hands if you want to say something. But for the sake of this meeting, because our microphones are muted, please kindly use the chat box to ask your questions and drop your comments. What we discuss here stays here. Mute your microphone unless you want to speak. Your microphones are already muted, so you will not be allowed to mute them. Participate actively and give space for others to participate. And one very important instruction is please ensure that your Zoom name matches your registration name. This is for the purpose of taking attendance. Attendance will be taken anytime during the session. So again, we ask you to ensure that your Zoom name matches your registration name so that you are not marked absent. I see some names dialed into this call. I see T. If your Zoom name is T, please ensure that you rename your device to show your correct name, your full name, and not your brand name. Thank you very much, Anne-Margrethe. I think it's a good time to start. We had already introduced Anne-Margrethe yesterday, and I'm sure that we really had a fantastic time having her facilitate the session. So today, she would continue with the topic, revenue and price modeling in fashion. Nice to have you again, Anne-Margrethe. Welcome on board.
Thank you. So wonderful to be back. And today is an absolutely critical session because a lot of you are not managing to grow your business because you don't have enough money in the works. And sometimes the reason why you don't have enough money is because you haven't worked out the costs of making your products properly, and you also haven't priced the products properly. The two things go together. They have a different approach, and it's important for you to understand both. So the class today, I'll go through the presentation, and if there's time, I'm going to do a live filling in of a costing sheet on the spot for you to see. If there's not time, you'll do that as your homework with your best-selling item. Why I asked you to think of your best-selling item, I called it a bestseller. Now, why I asked you to think of it is because that is the thing you sell a lot of. Now, if you've made a mistake in the pricing that you're selling it to your customers at, that is where you're making the biggest loss. Equally, if you've priced it nicely, giving yourself a good margin, that is where most of the money is coming from. So it's really important as we do this class today, in the back of your mind, you have your bestseller, and after the class, you'll be able to review it again and think through, are you actually charging the right amount of money for it? It's very unusual in these classes to find that someone needs to reduce the price. Usually the problem is we need to increase the price. I'm going to start there because before I share the slides, I want you to think about yourself and think about your attitude to price and think why you charge what you do. Now, something I often hear is, oh, but the customer won't pay any more money, the customer doesn't have more money, and so on. And sometimes that's true, but most times it's not actually true. And what it is we look at the people around us who are our friends and maybe our customers, and we start feeling sorry for them. So we present ourselves already thinking that we can't charge this for that because we don't value our work highly enough.
Yeah.
We don't value our skills. We go to the doctor and we pay the doctor because we value the doctor's skills. But when someone comes to us and wants to buy something to wear, we don't treat ourselves as if we were the doctor. If you look at it, the doctor has unique skills, which we don't have, and that's why we pay the doctor, because we need the service. Now, when people come to us, they also need the service. They need something nice to wear for an occasion or for everyday living. They don't know how to make it. And so they come to us because we have a skill. We have a skill that they value. They trust us to be able to give them something that will make them look good, feel good, and be taken seriously, depending on the environment, that they'll feel at home with other people. So as we go about this class today, I would be asking if you're charging very little for your products and you don't have enough cash in your business, is it because you are the barrier to charging the right amount of money that will help you reinvest cash back into your business and grow your business? Are you treating it like a hobby where you're getting money from other sources and you don't really need to have this money and so you're making it artificially low? Are you comparing yourself to secondhand clothing, which is coming into a lot of our markets in Africa at a very low cost? And it's being sold at a very low price. So how are you looking at your brand and how are you looking at yourself and how much value are you placing on your skills? That's the background. So let me start sharing and hopefully it's resonating with some of you. Let's see. So how much does your product cost to make? Now, this is a very important question because the difference between what you sell your product for and what you make your product for, the difference in between is the profit you're making on that item. Sure, you have other things in your business to pay, but what is the profit on that dress, that trouser, that jacket, and so on? What is the money you're making on the product, on the actual product itself? So let's have a look at how we do this. First of all, what I was talking to you about, that designers often cheat on how they cost their product. Now, when I say cost, I mean all of the little things that go into making a product. Have you worked out all of the costs correct? So things that make you maybe do it not so well. You feel sorry for your clients. You lack confidence. You feel like, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe someone else is better. And sometimes it's because you're selling on price, not value. What I mean by that, if you're in a marketplace selling exactly the same thing as your neighbor, you're all selling vegetables and all your vegetables are looking the same. Then you look at your neighbor's prices, your prices, okay, maybe today you've got too many onions, so that price goes down, or your neighbor's got too many tomatoes, so that, like that. But in the case of us as designers, and designers with our own brands, we don't have a direct competitor. Let me repeat that. We do not have a direct competitor. We're artists. We're doing something original, something different. So why are we selling it on price? Some of you may be in more mass market fashion, more basic fashion. And in that case, you may have someone that's doing something very similar that we could say is a direct competitor. But if you're doing something original, then that is what you should be talking about when you're selling. You should not be saying, oh, today this one's only $20, and you're selling on $20. No, you should be selling about how beautiful it's cut, and when you put it on the body, it feels good, and the decoration around the neck is framing your beautiful face. Those are things that are value to the client. So instead of talking about the money, you're talking about the value. That changes it. Then sometimes you're bullied by clients. So you're pushing your prices down because you have a client that really wants to get a cheaper price, and they are really assertive about it. And you just feel like you're shrinking, and there you go. I've got a client who I've just agreed today on pricing, but we took a break. We took a break because we were tired, and we make a lot of clothes for this individual. But at some point, it just wasn't working out. Like we were doing a lot of effort, but there was also a lot of pushing back from the client, or this has to be cheaper, or this or that. So now, this time round, we put the prices to our current rates, which are much higher. We always factor in a little bit for discount if necessary. So this client was very assertive. I'm walking away. I want my money back, my deposit, my fabric. So we said, okay, no problem. Just come and collect them. We'll return your money in 3 days' time because it was a credit card payment. And then one of my sales staff just said to her, you know, would you like us to make clothes with what you've already given us, or do you prefer us all to return it? Anyway, long story short, the lady is going ahead with everything. We gave the discount that we have factored into our prices, which was 10%. And in fact, she's decided she's just going to go ahead with the order. But sometimes we have to take a stand as a designer and not just immediately back down when the customer is getting pushy with us. Know your worth, know your value. What does your brand stand for? And then just take a stand and actually say, I'm really sorry, it's not possible. And maybe you invent a board of directors. Maybe you have directors, but maybe if you don't, you just say, I'm really sorry. The new directors have said, I can't give a discount beyond this amount. Finish. And if the client wants to walk away, let them walk away. In the vast majority of cases, if they really like your product, they'll be back. But don't get bullied. Just have a stand. And then the next thing a lot of designers do, we don't note the cost down when we're buying. So we go shopping, we have money in our pocket, we buy this, we buy that. Some of the shops we buy from give us receipts. Some of those receipts we put in our pocket, others we put in our bag, then we forget them, and then we throw them out by accident, or they drop out of our pocket. We haven't noted the cost down. We are guessing. My advice on that one, find someone in your office, anyone. It can be a tailor, it can be whoever, a messenger, anyone that you've noticed is good with money, and make sure that it becomes their job to get the receipt from you or the cost from you every time you bring something. They ask you, how much did you spend on this, before you've forgotten. Good. Let's go to the next slide. So here we go on how you cheat. Number one, you don't charge for your own time and effort. So you wake up in the morning, you do your designing, it's for a client, you've spoken to your accountant thinks you're just a magician and everything comes automatically. And both the accountant and you forget to factor in your own time. That distorts the cost of the product because you've spent time designing it. And if it wasn't you designing it, someone else would have to design it. And that is time that you must record. So that's a number one thing. Then you maybe reduce the cost of the fabric. You forget that you got a motorbike or a cab or whatever to go and get your fabric, and you haven't added that on to the actual cost per meter of the fabric. You forget about specific things within the making process. So maybe what could I say? Probably if you're doing something like printing, you'll remember that sort of thing. But if you have in your own workshop, you're doing different activities that make this dress, for example, you forget how much time that takes. For example, you're covering buttons to put on a shirt dress. You forget the time it takes to do those buttons. If you're taking it to a tailor outside, maybe they're giving you a total figure. That's easy. But when it's in your own workshop with your own staff, are you remembering all the processes? Old things in the cupboard. Hands up if you have pieces of fabric, new fabric, which has been in one of your cupboards for a long time. Can I see a reaction, please? Am I the only one? Just press on the reaction button. If you're somebody, oh yeah, I can see some people are raising their hands. So over the time you've been buying things, you haven't known what to do with them. So you just put them in your cupboard, and then one day you decide to use them, but you don't charge correctly for them because they're just lying around and you've forgotten how much they cost. That sort of thing you have to cost as if you are going to buy it today. So if you bought it 3 years ago, you charge as if you were buying it now. You have to do that because if you're going to repeat the thing, you need to know the real cost, not the pretend cost. So those are the ways that I can think of, but I'm sure there are others. Sometimes you may pretend that the making the thing, the fabric uses less fabric. Why do you do that? Because you're trying to bring the cost down so that to your ears, it sounds, affordable. But let me remind you, the customer is coming to you because you have a skill they don't have. So they have more money in their budget for that than you do. You don't have much money in your budget for clothes because you make them. So all you do is go buy the fabric and then you probably make it in your workshop. So in your head, you're thinking a very low clothing price. For someone who doesn't have those skills, their budget is higher. So I mentioned this, you need to know the difference between what your product really costs and the price you're selling it at. The difference between them is the gross profit on that product. So know the difference because that helps you decide. If you have a limited amount of money, that helps you decide whether you're going to make this or you're going to make that, because you're juggling how much profit you're going to make from that sale. Most of us have decisions to make on a daily basis in relation to our cash flow. As our businesses get stronger, we can plan our production each season, but there's always an interim phase, and there's always a time when something unexpected happens in our environment, in our economy. It's just the law of the world. And so we then have to make quick decisions about this amount of money. Does it go here or does it go there? If you have documented how much profit you're likely to make on each product, it's easier for you to make that decision. So I'm just going to check very quickly if there's any comments so far. I did forget to tell you that we'll be taking a 10 to 15 minute break in the middle of this class. And that is because we're having an extra long class this year, this time, because last year's cohort had asked for a 2-hour class. So I want to make sure that you all have a break in the middle. You're able to stand up, move around, do whatever you have to do, and then afterwards you'll come back again. So I'm just checking on questions so far. The thing about mentioning directors is that sometimes we're just a one-person show, and to say, I don't want to reduce the price further, the customer may get very personal with you. So why you say this about a board of directors is because in a company that has more structure, you would have a board. And if you can get a board, get one, even if you pay them in clothing, like just a present here and there. You may have clients or friends who are willing to help you. And it's better to talk to your client as if you have a board. And that allows you to be like the ally to the client. So the board has told me I have to do this. The board has told me I can't give any discount at all. But I understand your situation, so maybe I can just give you a little bit because we've been together for a long time. So I think I can give you 5% or maybe 10% if you give me cash, but I don't want to do any more because then I might get into trouble with my shareholders or my directors or think of a structure above you so that it doesn't become just you and the client. Okay, I think everybody was just agreeing, so I don't think, so about the cost on time, we're going to go through that. So labor is something that's a bit complicated, and that's why we're going to do it now. And then self-confidence, yes, please, a problem, and I've also been there. And even actually now, as my daughter came into the business to take over the creative design, she looked at the pricing and she said, this is crazy, like you have to up it again. So every so often you have to do a review. Prices change and you do have to change them. Right, so your labor costs, wonderful. So the question is, you as a designer, which job are you doing? And you have to cost it at the corresponding rate. So if you as a designer and the owner of the business are doing many different things, you might be sitting down on a sewing machine and sewing. If you're doing that, the rate for that is if you were a tailor, because if you're not at the sewing machine, you can pay a tailor this much and they make it for this much. The same thing with cutting. Usually cutting would be the head tailor. So if you're doing the cutting, that is the charge you would use. If it's the pattern cutting, we talked about patterns yesterday. For standardization and high quality, you need to invest in pattern. If you're doing the pattern cutting, question is, how much would you normally pay a pattern cutter? They may be difficult to find in your market. Usually the pattern cutter is paid more than the head tailor. Or if the head tailor is the pattern cutter, then that would be the charge. And then if you're designing, normally it would be higher again. So I've written these in reverse, but the key point is, if you're the highest paid because you're the top manager, you can't use that salary to cost the product if you're sitting at the sewing machine, because normally the manager is not sitting at the sewing machine. It's just because your tailor hasn't come to work or something like that. Why we do that is, as you grow your business, as you grow your production, even if you don't have any tailors right now, gradually you put in a tailor, or you put in 2 tailors, or you put in 3 tailors. So the actual job will be a tailor rate, not a manager rate. And I can't give you specific rates because you all live in different countries. But it's up to you to go and reflect on that a little bit and think, what would be a salary scale? Like, what would be the tailor? What would be the cutter, the pattern cutter, designer? How would you work it? So look at your own market and figure it out. Right. How long does it take to design? So before we go into the ABC, I just want to emphasize, and I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute, that you as a designer need to dedicate some time to making your designs. Now, if you don't do that and you're just going on Pinterest and you're taking this from here and that from there and that from there, the chances are when a customer comes into your shop, things are looking a bit all over the place. Or if you do a fashion show, you look confused. And if there's other designers showing next to you, you can't know when this designer finishes and that one starts. So as a designer that owns a fashion brand, you need to put a little bit of time into the design and research of your product. And it's much better to work it as a collection, because then when you do a collection, pieces work together. So you can sell that jacket with those pants and with that blouse, or you can sell that coat with that pair of pants, or you can sell that dress with that scarf and that jacket. So when you do a collection, this is not the topic of today, but when you do a collection, you have to plan the different pieces you're going to include in the collection. So now you as a designer have to set aside time to think about this. You have to think about the theme. What is your collection about? That theme, then, how are you interpreting it in your items? Do you have a slightly unusual neckline, which is maybe then picked up on the hem of a trouser or on the cuff of a jacket? How are you working your themes? What colors are you going to use? Are you doing something for the local market where, in my experience, it really doesn't matter? You just choose your color palette and you sell, because within most African markets, we have all colors and all kinds of fabrics that we're not conditioned to this color for this season. But if you're now exporting, or you're in a more developed market, I know South Africa is very driven by this color this season. So it depends where you're going to sell into. That requires research. You might be making an original textile, a print or something woven, or you might be working with different people to come up with something really original. All of that stuff requires time. So please, when you now factor how much time you've spent on a collection, you have to include all of that. I'm going to share the screen in a minute, but let's just take the example. And this is a very quick example, but let's take the example that you're going to dedicate 2 weeks fully to create 10 designs. Now that's not, you can do them more elaborate or less elaborate, but you're going to do 10 designs in 2 weeks. You're going to think about them, you're going to experiment, you're going to do different ideas. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you're going to say, these are my 10 designs of this collection. So how do I go about costing my time? I think, and I would advise you to think, what salary would I want to be on monthly if I was working for someone else as a designer? I repeat, what salary would you want monthly if you were working as a designer for someone else? Now, you might say, oh, on my part, there's no one paying designer, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. Then think, okay, how much would I accept to work for someone else, whatever the job? I have my business, I love it, it's my passion. What is going to make me get up in the morning and work for someone else? How much would that be? So you take that monthly amount, you divide it by 2, and you have your 2 weeks. So for these 2 weeks, so let's say, just for the sake of argument, I want $1,000 per month, my salary. Or maybe I can say 2,000. Let's be daring. Let me say I want 2,000 to go and work for someone else. So for the 2 weeks, that becomes 1,000. Yeah, so I'm getting $1,000 for 2 weeks work. In those 2 weeks, I'm going to make 10 designs. So I'm working hard to get them really perfect. I'm coming up with perfect designs. I'm coming up with ideas that I've then tested, I've tried, I've changed this, I've changed that. These are my 10 perfect designs at the end of the 2 weeks that I'm getting $1,000 for. So I take the $1,000, I divide by 10 to get the price per item, right? So in this case, that means one of my designs is $100. Are we together? So one design is $100 of my time. Hands up if you think that sounds a lot. Does it sound a lot? $1,000 per design. I'm putting it in the box. That's design work. So a lot of you think it sounds a lot. Well, I hope I'm going to, yes, I know that designers don't, like even doctors don't earn $2,000 in your country. No problem. Just stay with me and let's just think through what this then means. So we've now said $100 per design. So now the question becomes, how many items are you going to make in that one design? So I've got the fantastic design. Am I only going to make one? No. This is ready to wear. I'm going to make a number, right? So I'm keeping the maths easy. So one design is $100. I'm going to make 10 of them. So if I make 10 pieces, I'm writing this in the chat box. So try not to make comments for just now. 10 pieces in one design. So that is $100 divided by 10, right? Which is now $10. So I'm suggesting that that's the design price you could add on the piece. But what happens if now there's one design I've done, I've decided to make it in 3 different colorways. So this one's in print, this one's in blue, and this one's in stripes, okay? So now instead of it being 10 pieces for that one design, we're now talking about 30 pieces, right? Let me not do 30, sorry. Let's just say we're doing it in 5 different colorways. I'm trying to keep the maths easy. So we're now making 5 pieces with that one design. So instead of adding 10, I'm adding 50 divided by 100 divided by 50 is $2. So that is now what I'm adding onto the cost of the garment. I'm going to repeat this again. I've done a fabulous imaginary salary because I'm a dreamer and I want my work to be recognized. So my work has now become $2,000 a month. I then have decided I'm doing 2 weeks only designing a collection. So that is $1,000 for my 2 weeks of work. I'm coming out with 10 perfect designs. So I take my $1,000, I divide them by 10, and I end up with $10 per design. But I haven't made all of that effort to just make 10 pieces. I'm now thinking I can make them in different colors and different fabrics. So I'm taking the same design and I'm making it in 5 different fabrics. So instead of doing 10 pieces, I'm doing 10 times 5, that's 50 pieces. So my one design is creating 50 pieces. And so I take now the $10 per design, I divide it, the $100 for my design, and I divide it by 50 pieces that I'm going to make during the lifetime of this design. And I end up with $2 that I'm adding to the cost of that individual. We're going to go through this live on a costing sheet. I think a lot of you are getting the idea. I just want to take you back to whoever $2,000 is a crazy salary. It's translating into $2 on a garment. That really is not a huge amount of money if you have a good brand, and we'll take it forward in a minute. But let's also just think about the doctor. If the doctor is not getting $2,000, but imagine the doctor is getting $2,000. Are you not worth as much as the doctor? It's a value. For some people, of course, it's normal when you're sick, you need to go to the doctor. But when you've got a special wedding, a special occasion, you need to go to the designer. If your child is getting married, you need to look good. So the value is relative. Don't put yourself in a scenario where you think the doctor must be paid more than you. If you're doing something beautiful, very high quality, why shouldn't you be paid properly? It's a lot of love, it's a lot of effort. So just keep thinking about it, but don't automatically think that you don't deserve it. I think if you do a great job, you deserve to be paid well. And as we said, it is only $2 on the final item if you do the calculation the way I've done it. Right, let me share my screen again. So that slide is all about that. Please take a screenshot or a photo or whatever you want. I explained it in the other way because I think it's a bit easier to understand. So I'm moving on to the next slide. Oops, I went too far. Right, piecework. So we have different ways of costing labor for making our garments. One of the easy things is piecework. You agree on a rate that the worker is going to be paid for making the item. So that's like taking it to a factory. You're told, okay, I'm going to stitch it for $5, and then you negotiate and you say, I'm bringing you 50 pieces. I only want to pay $2.50, and then you probably end up in $3.50 or $4. Now, what is the difference between negotiating a manufacturing price and negotiating a designer's price? For me, it's about how many people can do the same job. So sure, there will be one tailor that's better than another, but there are a number of good tailors probably that you can go to. So if this one is this price and that one has a similar quality and the price is lower, you're going to go there. Of course, you need to be fair. You don't want to exploit people. But in manufacturing, you have a lot of direct competitors because there are people who can do exactly the same job. In the designer case, we don't do exactly the same job because we're artists. It's about our creativity, our soul, our inspiration. We all come up with different things. So that's why there's a difference. Now, some of you have workers that you employ on a regular basis, maybe in your workshop. Now, within Kenya, people who have workers coming to them and using their machines have different ways of working. Some of them pay piece rate, where they've already agreed it's this much, and others employ on a monthly salary. And that's what I'm going to discuss now, because that's a little bit more complicated to calculate. So let's go through this slide. So if you have employed workers, you take the monthly salary, but you also include other things. If you've given them benefits, you make them tea, you give them lunch, maybe you give them an insurance, or you pay for their transport, whatever it is, you work out how much is all of that in the month. So you take the total, and then you can, just to make it simple for maths, you can divide it by 4 to get a weekly rate. Now, in this case, sometimes the month will be slightly more than, maybe it'd be 4.2 or 4.5, depending on the days of the month. But if you use 4, it will be slightly higher, which is better on your costing sheet. On a costing sheet, you want the price to be slightly higher than lower so that you don't make a mistake that costs you money. So you take it, you divide before you get the weekly rate, and then you divide by the number of working hours, and you don't count time to drink tea or time to have lunch. So if somebody's with you for 8 hours and then they're taking an hour for lunch, that becomes 7 hours when you're working out what the cost is to your production. Let me repeat it. If you're on an 8-hour day, they come in for 8 hours, but 1 hour is out for lunch. You take 7 hours as the working hours and you divide the weekly rate by the 7. That will give you an hourly rate, right? So you have an hourly rate. And then you need a clock. You need to understand exactly how many hours are used in the different processes of your business. How long does it take to make a pattern? And when I say make a pattern, I don't mean you're rushing, and you make a mistake and you have to go back. No, try and time it properly. How long does it make to make a good pattern where everything fits and it works? How long does it take to take the pattern and put it on the fabric and work out how to place it? And here I put a note that if you are cutting fabric in layers with a cutting machine, you're going to reduce the amount of time it takes to cut. And then how long does it take to stitch the thing on the sewing machine? How long does it take to overlock it before you stitch it? And how long does it take to clean it at the end, finish it, sew on the buttons, cut off the threads? How long does it take to iron it? And how long does it take to pack it? So why I asked you to think of your bestseller and just start by working with this bestseller, the thing you make that you sell most of, is if you just take that item and spend time looking at this, you're going to get a much more accurate idea of how long it takes. Note that also when you're making a sample, it takes longer because the tailor is getting to know how to do it. Whereas when it's something they're doing a lot of at the same time, it becomes much faster. I am just going to, yeah. So let me just see if there's any questions on this so far. I'm just checking. There's lots of things about Moodle. I'm glad someone's got a screenshot. That is good. Yes, the thing about spending time on designing, I see from Kawira. Hi, Kawira. It enables a designer to develop a unique design, aesthetic, and creativity is the muscle. The more you use it, the better you become. 100%. Time spent designing is never a waste of time. Good. I think we're just getting lots of nice compliments. Thank you, everybody. It's very nice. Now, someone said, does it mean $2 per piece per size? No, it just means $2 per piece. So if I'm making 50 dresses, it doesn't matter what size they are. I'm adding $2 on the costing of that item. If I make a size small or a size large, it's the same. It's $2. If I'm talking about fabric, the cost is going to be different according to the size in some cases. But if we're talking about labor, about the designing or the stitching or things like that, the cost will be the same. I hope that's, and I'm just checking if there's anything else. What if you're the designer and the tailor at the same time? I already answered that, meaning if you're the tailor, if you're being the tailor, if you're sewing at the sewing machine, the amount of money you charge or the monthly salary you're thinking of is what you would pay a tailor. Now, let me just think what a tailor's salary will be. As we say, it's different in different markets. So let me use $200. So your monthly salary is $200 for the tailor. So when you're costing your garment, please don't say, it's $100 because I'm making it myself. No, you cost it as if you had hired a tailor to make it. You're not trying to bring down the prices on a costing sheet by pretending you're paying yourself an extra low salary. If tailors are paid $100 in your country, then don't put $50 as a monthly salary because you're the one stitching. If you're the one stitching, you charge it at the same price as if you were getting a tailor from anywhere around. If you're doing the designer work, you charge it as if you were on a designer salary. Any business, when you're setting out and it's small, there are certain responsibilities that you do as the owner, which when you get bigger, you'll employ someone else to do. So when you're working out the cost of an item, you cost it as if you have employed someone in that role, even if it's you're the one doing it. Now, if you're slow at pattern making, do you factor in extra hours for the cost? In a way, yes, because usually someone with experience will be faster and someone without experience will be slower. Now, in any marketplace with labor, if you've got a lot of experience, you're able to charge more per month than someone who's just beginning. So what would happen in the case of you're taking more hours to do the pattern making, but the salary would be lower because you're not an expert. I hope that's clear. Yeah, and this costing is universal. It doesn't matter if you're making kids wear, women's wear, men's wear, home furnishing, curtains, whatever. We're looking at what is the real cost. That is what we're looking at, because then we can move forward and we can, pricing is a more political thing in the sense that you look also at what the market is prepared to pay. However, when you take the cost and you mark up, you know what the minimum is you can charge. So from the cost, you can work out your minimum selling price. But if you're in a market where you've made a beautiful story about your brand and everybody's after your brand, or your quality is super high, sometimes you can charge more than that. And then honestly, why not? If the customer is willing to pay, why not charge more? Do you want to give your charity to the customer, or would you rather make a bit more money, reinvest in the business, or donate to a charity you want to donate to? That's the way to think about it. Right, let's go back. Now, this chart, one thing I don't like about it is that word competitors. Remember what I said, if you're a real artist doing your own real designs, you have no direct competitors. You have other designers in the market who will also sell to the same customers, because unless you're paying someone to wear your clothes only, they're definitely going to buy clothes from different people. I repeat, no customer wears one brand 24/7. If you're wearing one brand on the outside because you're the designer, probably your underwear is a different brand or your shoes are a different brand. So we need to move our minds from thinking of our fellow designers as direct competitors. They're not. Fellow designers who have their own unique designs and they have the same type of quality of manufacturing as you can actually work together and sell to the same clients, sell through the same shops, because the consumer is going to buy one from this one, one from that one from that one, and so on. If there's only two of you in the shop and they like one, it doesn't mean they're going to buy more from you. They may just walk down the street and go to another shop and buy there instead, because a customer wants variety, and they don't only want variety from you. They are individuals with their own sense of who they are, and they want to express themselves, to stand out in the crowd and show their individuality. So even as you make them something, they may wear it in a way that's different from how you imagined it. So move from that mentality of competitor into something of a designer who can sell to the same audience. Don't cheat yourself. Think about what you're really passionate about and what you're really good at. If you look at my background today, I've got a big painting there because today I'm at my house and I love art. Now, not everybody in this class loves art. Some do, some don't. Some like the kind of art I have. Others like completely different kinds of art. Where have you got synergy? Think what you're about, what your brand's about, and where have you got synergy with other people? And then target those consumers together. It makes it much easier when you share resources. But obviously, you don't pair up with designers who you've got nothing in common with. Designers whose quality is completely different. Fabric quality, fiber quality, stitching quality, and so on. Like a designer who's doing very conservative things is not going to match well with a designer who's doing very contemporary, avant-garde things, because the client is going. So be realistic about who you are, who your brand is, and pair up like that. I digressed. I'm sorry. Let's see the time. We'll do a little bit more and then we're going to stop. So fabric costs. How many meters does a style take? So this relates a bit to a previous question about sizing. If you're doing sizes small, medium, large, use the biggest size to calculate how much fabric you're going to take. Now, an exception in that is if you're doing plus sizes, as well as regular sizes, you may make a difference because plus sizes take a lot more fabric. So you might have a price for your plus size range and a price for the other sizes. Just because if you use the plus size for everything, it's going to distort the amount of fabric you're using. I hope I'm clear. And remember, if you're using a print, we talked about this yesterday, the print must match. It must match at the back, it must match at the sides. And that means you have to move the pattern around so that it coincides. So that means you need to buy a little bit extra to make it match. Another fabric you need to buy extra is corduroy, velvet, because if you turn the pattern upside down, this way it will look dark and the other way it will look light. And when you join them together, at least for classic fashion, that looks strange. It shouldn't be an accident, it should be deliberate. But it does mean you have to add extra fabric so that everything can go in the same direction. A reminder, have you included your transport? And if you are going to repeat the order in the future, is it likely that you may have to add extra? And something we are doing in some of our African economies, it depends on how your currency is with the dollar or the franc or whatever your currency is pegged against. But if you're getting a lot of fluctuation in currency, and we've had quite a lot recently in Kenya, it's prudent to do your costing in dollars if a lot of the things are imported, because maybe today it's costing this amount in your local currency and tomorrow it's completely changed. So for production planning, just remember to put it in dollars in that case. And then are you buying many meters at the same time, or are you buying client by client? Because client by client, more expensive. You have to have the motorbike there and back both times. Whereas if you're buying a lot together, the transport's cheaper. Equally, if you're buying a lot together, maybe you're able to negotiate a better rate. And so you bring it down. And then the quantity that I was relating to. If you're buying a lot of materials, the price may come down. And then you take the transport cost and you divide it by the number of shirts. So if you're sending someone for money for fabric to make 10 shirts, and they're bringing it with the same motorbike, the motorbike cost is divided by the 10 shirts. So it's not one shirt that's paying for the motorbike. I hope that's also clear. And then the very important thing about don't base your production cost on your sample price, on your sample cost. So when you make samples, you're making one by one. So everything is more expensive. You maybe have a little bit of wastage on your fabric. You're correcting things. The labor is, the tailor is learning how to stitch it. There's a correction to be made, so it has to happen again, and so on. So for production costs, what I like to do is look at the lifetime of the design. So just like I was talking before about 50 pieces, let's stay with the 50. If I'm making 50 pieces and that's all that my tailors are doing for the next few days, they're going to get really fast at making the same thing. And if I'm buying the fabric and able to cut all of the size small together, remember I said 5 different fabrics. So I layer them and I'm cutting all the smalls together, all the mediums together, all the large together. The cost of the cutting has gone down. I'm using an electric machine. If you get a chance to buy one of those, if you don't have them, it makes a huge difference to how fast you cut. So all of these things bring your production cost down. So you can cost your sample, but then remember for your production cost, where is it going to reduce so that you have a realistic price. I'm going to take a break. We're all going to take a break. And we're going to come back at, okay, for me now it's saying 16:57. So we'll come back at 17:10. That, of course, is East African time. Do your maths. We're coming back at 10 minutes past. So 17:10 if you're in the eastern part of Africa. That is when we will resume. Go take a break. Please move. Some of you just stay sitting, try and stand up, move around, get yourself a cup of whatever, and then we start. I'm going to check in the chat box if there's any questions, and I'll answer them when we come back. Thank you. See you in a bit. Give me a reaction if you're back. Send me some love, some kind of sign or other. Let's see what reaction I can give. Let me give a heart. How many people are back? Let me know you're here, right? Keep it coming so I know you're there. Wonderful. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible so we all grow from it. Let's hope for the best. Yeah, a few more reactions, that'd be good. Wonderful. I've tried to answer a few questions that were in the chat box. So if you'd asked one, you may find the answer there. Great. So I think we can resume. Yes. lots of people are back. So let me share my screen again. What we're going to do by the end, I'm going to show you an actual costing. Some of you are asking about markups. I'll get there. The markup is relatively easy. It is a formula, but it may change according to the market you're in. So let me just, sorry, there's something I need to bring up. Here we go. Share the screen there. Talking to myself, folks, and I'll just change the format. So, global fashion margins and markups. Now, I like to tell you about this because it's very good for the ones that are feeling guilty about charging. Because when you see what is charged internationally, I think a lot of you will be shocked. The reason it's a lot higher is because they have established businesses with certain kinds of minimum labor charges, and they've got a lot of marketing. There's a whole series of things that shops have to do to sell product. And all of that is now factored in the market. Here in Africa, we often forget that we're very many different kinds of businesses, but we're at least 3. And I'm going to take you through that first, so you understand where the markups apply. So there are different business models in fashion. You can have the thing of a high price, high volume. Now, if it's high price and a high volume, you're really making a lot of money. So the more you can get to that point, the better. High price, low volume. There's quite a lot of us designers that are in that boat. We may not have got enough money in the business to be able to make our designs in volume and distribute to many different places. But if we get investment into the business and are able to scale up, then we would be going towards number 1, the higher price and the higher volume. Now, low price, high volume, that is something that is very common when you're making basics. So if you're doing just very regular stuff that everybody wants, you're going to sell a lot of them. And often those ones are a lower price point because they're basic and everybody wants. But in a designer business, you have to be careful because you may not be doing enough volume at the right price for the markup. And that way you may actually end up being low price with problems in your volume, because although the market demand is there, you can't make enough because you don't have enough cash, because you're selling like crazy. But by the time you get the money from your distributors, like there's an interruption in stock. So you actually need a lot of cash to do a low price, high volume business. You need a lot of cash in the works. When you're starting, try and keep your overheads down. Your rent should be as cheap as possible. So fast fashion, like Zara and H&M and so on. So I asked about this before I did the last class, and I was told that once they have landed everything in their market, it's a times 2.5. Now, I used to work in Mango back in the day, and the markup from, if we were making stuff in, say, China, from the cost at the time, or sometimes Tunisia, it was actually 5.5. So I'm not sure exactly when it changed and how it changed, but this is with everything factored in. It's all the costs, all the taxes, customs paid, everything. It's actually at the shop that it's going to be sold at. That's where that one is. And then if it's a company like H&M and Zara, because they're making huge volumes, they're able to control a lot of the manufacturing price. So they're able to make a lot of fabric at the same time. And that means they squeeze the manufacturers to bring the cost lower, because they say we're doing tens of thousands of meters, probably hundreds of thousands of meters. So you have to bring your cost down. So they have a negotiating power. And then you also have the whole thing on the garment manufacturing, because again, if you tell a factory, and maybe that factory's got, I don't know, thousands of workers, and you guarantee them work for the next 3 months on one style, then definitely you can negotiate the price. I'm using Zara and H&M as examples as opposed to, say, Shein, because Shein has got a whole lot of other things about, you know, are they paying a minimum wage, etc., etc. So I don't want to go there for now, but let's just take the fast fashion thing of Zara and H&M, and this is how it would work. And then sometimes the price is also lower because of the type of fabric they're using. But increasingly, because the market, developed markets have very strong consumer associations, they still have to maintain a certain level of manufacturing and quality. Now, designer fashion, you're probably going to look at this slide and think I made a mistake, but I didn't. So the traditional business model, the designer sells wholesale to a store. They don't sell direct, or maybe they have one flagship store, but most of their distribution, they're selling to another shop. And that shop also has to make a profit. So I, as a designer, sell wholesale to the store. They maybe order 50 pieces or 100 pieces or 200 pieces, whatever it is. They'll start small and they'll build up. So they place their order, you charge them a wholesale price, and then they mark up on top to cover all of their costs, their rent, their marketing, and so on. So traditionally, that would be the thing the designer would do, is they would take the product cost, the one we were just talking about, and they multiply by 2.5. In some cases, they mark up by 2.8, but let's just take 2.5 because it's easier maths. So I, the designer, have worked out the cost of my product, and now I mark up times 2.5 to get the wholesale price that I will sell it to in a shop in Paris, for example. Then the person now receiving that, who's going to sell in Paris, is marking up times 3 in very many cases. Sometimes a little bit higher than 3, unlikely to be lower unless they're having a sale. Just look at those figures. So I, the designer, have added times 2.5, and then the shop that has received the goods has times it by 3. And they sell it at that price to the consumer. That includes any sales tax. So what does that mean? It means that if I made something that cost $10 to make, I multiply times 2.5 and I sell it to a shop for $25, 10 times 2.5. The shop imports it, pays all the shipping, the duty and things like that, and then it marks up times 3. So 25 times 3, it becomes $75. So what I had spent $10 to make is sold to the consumer at $75. And what that means is a markup times 7.5. That, when we're in Africa, is a kind of mind-boggling figure. But honestly speaking, that is the global fashion system. Each part of the chain has to make money. And because of that, each time it's added. So if I was going direct to consumer, with exactly the same piece of clothing, selling it online, if I'm also doing wholesale and then the retailer is marking up, it's a times 7.5 markup. So for most of us, this is very difficult to understand. And it's also some maths that are difficult to work with in our markets. So what we're doing as the Kiko Romeo brand, we have to do the times 2.5 and the times 3 because we're now selling in international markets. We have an agent, and this is the standard practice. So on our website, if you're in the US or the UK or you're in Japan and you shop on our website, this is the maths that apply. It's like the $10 times that ends up at 75. Or maybe it cost us $100 to make, so it becomes $750. So what we've now done is in the East Africa, when you go on our website to shop, if you put in your country, and your country is one of the East African countries, it's generally a 25 to 30% discount. But we haven't done that for, say, Nigeria, Ghana, because if we're shipping from East to West Africa individually, there's a huge cost attached. It's actually very expensive for us. And so we've given that discount in the East African market to make it easier for our local clients to be able to shop. But you have to find what works for you. And this is now, if you are, say, a contemporary or luxury designer selling into top international fashion retail stores, like the really top ones, this is what you will end up having to do. And what this means is that when they mark up like that, if they have a sale and put 50% off, they're still making some money. So 50% off means they're selling at $35, but they paid $25 and then the shipping and the customs, so they're at least breaking even. Let me take you back to the local scene, but please save this slide because I swear that is how it is done internationally, and we need to understand this so we at least value ourselves a bit better. So let me just go back. I skipped it. Yeah. So what I usually advise here, we have different kinds of businesses, and I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. So our businesses, we're designers who effectively can sell our designs. So our designs have a value. It's like a graphic designer sells their artwork. A fashion designer can also sell their design. That is like the IP. It's the design service. So that is one kind of business. Then we often have our own manufacturing business, meaning we either have our own workshop or we organize production. So that is a different business. So we take a design and we make it into a product. That's the second business. And then the third business that a lot of us have is retailing. We sell to the consumer through Instagram, through Facebook, through website, through our own physical shop. So we have 3 businesses, and each business should be making its own profit. Even if your design business is in your bedroom and you're sitting in a corner with a desk and that's where you're doing your designing, that is a business. It's a service, it's your IP, it's a business. The production, I hope you've understood, is another business. It will have different employees or different suppliers. It's a business. And the last one is the retail, where you've got your shop staff or your online communication people, etc. And each of them make their own profit. If you think like that, you understand better why it's important to have a markup at each stage. Because let's take it differently. So I have my own shop, and I sell to a hotel shop and I'm selling the same product. How is the hotel going to feel if I mark up ×2 from cost, which is a wholesale price, and in my shop, I sell the things at that price, but I also use that price to sell to the hotel. And then the hotel has to mark up again to sell to their client. So in some cases, a bit of a difference is allowed. But if you're in a market where people go and shop in these same places, or they look online and they can see the price online, and my online price is half the price of a shop, my product in another shop, the shop doesn't want to buy from me anymore because I've undercut them. Why would I, with my hotel shop, be charging the customer double what the designer is charging in their shop? It doesn't make sense. So if you're on a ×2 model currently, minimum move to ×4. It will be a transition. You may have to have a marketing strategy around it, but you have to work towards that. You can't just think it's okay to be ×2. Plus, you never have money to reinvest. That's another problem. But let's go back to this. So it's the direct cost of the product ×2, gives you the wholesale price. And then from the wholesale price, you multiply ×2 and get retail. Ideally, you would multiply ×2.5. Why? Because in retail, usually you have to pay taxes in most countries, VAT. And if you've now factored that in, it makes it easier for the retailer. Let me go over the maths. Something that costs $10 would be sold to by the designer to a shop for $20. That's the wholesale price. The shop sells it to the consumer at $40. Or if they marked up times 2.5, it would be $50. So a total markup of times 4, that would be the minimum that you should all work towards, and you should preferably make it times 5. Times 5 will cover shipping, duty, and so on. I hope I'm being very, 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 very clear here. If you're currently at times 2, try to move to times 3. If you're at times 3, move to times 4 and have a strategy around it. Every single designer business I know that has put their price up, they've ended up selling more, not less. And I just did a study tour around about 8 different businesses. And without me opening my mouth or briefing any of the designers I took round, all of these people said that when they put their prices up, they actually got more clients, not less. Why? Because if you're too cheap, people think your quality is poor, or they think you're exploiting your workers, or whatever they think. They never imagine that you're selling so cheaply because you're marking up wrongly. Because in developed markets, that formula always applies. Locally, people don't know about it. So we all do our own thing, and then it becomes very chaotic. But if you just understand the logic and you then decide to do it, try it, you'll find it works. You just say, I'm really sorry, I had to put my prices up because my accountant told me if I didn't do so, I was going to go out of business. It's a bit dramatic, but it's true. I was told that once when I was doing times 2, a long time ago, and it made such a huge difference to the liquidity of cash in my business. I was then able to grow the business. So your customers do not want you going out of business. That is not something they want. They want to keep coming and getting more stuff from you. So if you're no longer there, you've created a problem, right? So if you're selling direct to the consumer, you have to be at the same price as the shop is selling your stuff, so that you don't have that competition between you and your stockists. Right. I am looking at the time. We still have a little more time. Just to remind you something I said earlier. The more volume you sell, the more cash flow you need. You need more money in the system, the more you sell. If you've got a good enough markup, the money will be there. If you're marking up times 2, you're going to have a complete interruption in stock and you'll go out of business. If you're at times 3, it's going to be tough. You won't be like, you're going for a certain market, like a mass market, and you need to do a lot of volume to make sure you make enough money for your overheads. So if you're a smaller design business, do the unique products, make the story, make it sound good, make people really want to buy it. And then they're not thinking about the price, they're thinking about the value. You cannot compete with Zara, H&M, and you certainly cannot compare with Shein. They have huge, huge, huge volumes of manufacturing, and everything about that means that whatever they do, they're getting a cheaper price for it. So you have to think differently. You have to do things differently. You can admire their designs or whatever you like, but as a designer business, you have to think differently. So find the model that suits you, and then that is what you focus on. I'm going to stop sharing and talk to you and then share something different. Do we have any questions on this? Because then I would answer them before I go on to showing you an Excel template and trying to show you some of these things related to markups and also related to how much you charge as a designer. I'm just checking. Look, a lot of people have really undervalued their products. And if you're benchmarking with other designers and they're all going cheaper, 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 and they're all selling on price, it's a race to the bottom. Yeah. You're all going out of business. Alternatively, when a designer in your market suddenly charges a very high price for something, and you're like, oh my goodness, instead of saying, oh my goodness, how on earth can she charge that? Just say, oh my goodness, how fantastic. That's wonderful, because then I can charge more. Even if I'm not charging as much as that, I can charge more than I'm charging now because like that person is now charging that and they're selling fewer things to make. Let me just show you. If I sell a dress at $1,000 and I sell 5 of them a month, only 5, $1,000, that's me with my $5,000, right? If my dress, instead of costing $1,000, costs $500, I'm going to have to sell. So if I'm selling at 1,000, I need 5 to make 5,000 a month, $5,000 a month. If I'm selling at 500, I need 10. If I'm selling at 250, I need 20. If I'm selling at 100, how many do I need? I need 50. And if I'm selling at $50, I need 100 and so on. And if I'm selling at $25, I need 250. So how strong is your marketing? How good is your sales team? Is it easier to sell 10 items at $500 or 50 items at $100 or 250 at $25? That is what you have to ask yourselves. I'm putting it in the chat box. Can you sell more easily? And it depends on your business. 5 dresses at $1,000, 10 at 500, 50 at 500, sorry, 50 at 100, or 250. It was 250 at $25 to make $5,000 a month. Now I'm just picking this. If this number is crazy to you, no problem. Like, what is easier for you? What kind of design business are you? So some of you will be a more mass market brand. And so, I mean, still selling 250 dresses at $25 is a lot of work unless you have a big store somewhere or a number of different stores. 50 at 100 and so on. Now, if you're selling wholesale, the price will be cheaper, but the customer is buying in bulk. If you're selling direct to the public, what is easier for you? Who are you in the sense of what are the circles you move in? Where are you comfortable selling to? What is the story of your brand? All of those things are important. So I can't judge that for you, but you need to think about this to decide where you want to place your brand. And if, for example, $500 is a very high price in your market, maybe there's another market that will easily pay $500. I know $500 for many countries is a high thing, and you do have to have great design and a great story. It can't just sell like that. You have to make effort on your PR. But if you're now selling 250 dresses at $25, you need to have a very well-organized sales team. You need to really be moving volumes in different places. So think about that. The two go together. Someone's saying to sell with €1,000, you must work with celebrity and be famous. True, but some of you may be. I don't know you. And some of you may know how to do that. So for me, it's a rhetorical question for you to think who you are in all of this fashion mix. Do I still recommend this approach for items that typically have a price ceiling? For example, shirts globally will sell for no more than... Okay, so there is a ceiling in specific markets on items that are made by many people. So if many people are making a similar kind of thing, in a similar kind of way, and this particularly applies if you're in manufacturing and you haven't done much with your brand, then definitely there's a cutoff point. Remember I said that manufacturing, you end up competing with many people, and that may be where you're comfortable and that may be what you want to do. And often you'll be selling at a wholesale price, or maybe you're selling to the public, but your brand is similar to many other brands. Definitely there's a ceiling. But if you're the artist, the ceiling is only how you sell yourself. It's only the story that you spin for someone to buy into your brand? Is it a one of a kind? Is it a limited edition? Is it? I'm just throwing out numbers because in some ways there is no limit. If you go into the art world and you look at Banksy, you can see there's no limit. There's a point there. It can be anything and it evaporates. So it's about where you want to place your company, where you want to place your brand, and then you do it. If you're doing different, if you want to place your company to serve these two markets, is it viable to create a separate brand identity? Yes. So if you want to access different types of markets and have a high range and a low range, definitely completely different brand identity, different Instagram, different Facebook, different website, different everything, different marketing strategy, different attention to detail, different complication even on pattern. If it's a cheaper thing, then make the pattern simpler, faster to produce and so on and so forth. Very much important that they're different. And sorry, I'm just checking if there's anything else here. Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at administrative things. Let me take you through so it's a tough call because the economy plays a part. Of course it does. So for example, we in Kenya have different markets, different price points, different salaries. So it's easy to have a high brand that hits one lot. And I would say that what's happened in the transition to my daughter is she's taken it more upmarket in positioning. So there's the original client who was probably upper middle market. Now there's a much higher range. And then we also used to have a different brand, which was lower. Just choose at which point you want to do that. Because it's sometimes, depending on who you are, if you're the artist that's creating one of a kind, you go up. If you're really chap on business, your efficiency, or this or that, maybe a lower market or a middle market is what you're better at. So just think, who are you? What do you like? Because you have to place yourself where you're comfortable and you start there. And then once you've got that moving, then you can start somewhere else if you want to expand into something else. Right, let me share this this sheet. Sorry, just give me a second. I want to share an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to share this with you in the groups so you can work on it for your bestseller. Right, so let's just go to the top. It's a template that allows you to put in where you're going to manufacture, your brand. And you see, as a company, you may have different brands with different price points. So you put it according to the brand. You then, what I've added here, I put a description, a straight knee-length dress with the 3/4 sleeves, print all over. I'm going to go back to the projected production quantity because it is very important. We'll go there in a bit. So now you list the composition of the fiber, because if someone is pulling this out to repeat it in the future, they may want to know what fiber it was. So this one's cotton. I've named my supplier. I've put the width of the fabric. Why that's important is because if I change the fabric to say 58 inch or the equivalent in centimeters, the amount of fabric I need is going to be lower. So it's very important that when you fill it in, you put the size of the fabric, the width. If you're buying a fabric like a Bogolan or something like that, you're going to be buying by piece. So if you're buying one piece, or if you're making a dress, do you need one piece? Do you need 1.5 pieces? So I could have instead put here piece, right? And then here, instead of 2, because that's maybe 2 meters, I might have said, okay, 2.5 meter, let me put 1.5 pieces. And then the cost would be the cost of the piece. I don't know the current costs, and my costs here would be different from, say, if I was buying in Mali. But there, let me just put in anything, just so you see what happens in the column. So the number over here will change. So I've just put in $20. Like if the piece of fabric is costing $20 and I need 1.5, it's automatically done the maths for me. So when you fill in this, please don't write in the gray boxes. I already did them so it does automatic calculation. It makes your maths easier. But if you write in them, you'll forget. So keep the original as a template. And then when you're trying others, just copy the file and try separately. I put in the elastane, like imagine it's got some elastic. I've put where I'm going to buy it. I've put the width. I've put how much it costs per meter. Or sorry, how many meters I need, and then how much it costs per meter, and then it does an automatic calculation. These were labels. Okay, I've forgotten why I did that, but anyway, the shop, just put in as many details as possible. Very important, in these columns, I'm just going to put in, let me put in a different color, so you're clear which ones they are. These columns, you must only put a number, not the one you can see I've highlighted. Don't put meters, for example, because if I put, for example, here 2m per meter, you see over here, it says value. It's because I put an m, whereas if I leave it as a number only, it calculates the maths. I repeat, no letters, no numbers in these two columns so that the maths are done automatically. Okay, so I've added everything up there and I've got a material cost. It's not very high. I've just put it like it's in dollars. What I want to do is come down here. So I just wanted to show you, I had done like a design thing. I've just put it's easy. It took 3 hours. This is just an example. And I've put an hourly rate of $10. So this is a different way of doing it from what I showed you before. You can do it this way or the other way, but for now we leave it like this. So just think, how much would you want to be paid by a day? If you're doing an 8-hour days, that would be $80 for the day. Think whatever it is, put it in. And then how difficult or complicated you put in the number of hours. Now I put the designer higher than the artwork and higher than the pattern grading, just because of the hierarchy in a design company. And then we got these figures, 30, 80, 36. Now you see here, where it says production quantity 10, you don't write there. What I've done up here, I put a number. I'm going to change it to 1, as if I was doing 1. So at that point, the whole design, artwork, and pattern cutting get put onto one garment. So the garment becomes, I want to put another color, and I'm struggling a bit with the size. 2 minutes. I just want to be able to highlight the one I'm on. So you see this figure here of 183. If I say I'm only going to make 1, this is a cost. This is not the price I'm selling to the public. If I'm only going to make 1, all of the design, the pattern work is going on 1 item. If I say I'm going to make 10, look what happens to that figure. It's become 47. Instead of 183, it became 47. And before I had mentioned 50. So let's look again at what happens if it becomes 50. It becomes 35. So there's not a huge difference between, I'm just going to try and make it slightly smaller. Oh, maybe that's too small to see. Sorry. Let me just leave it bigger. Yeah. So there's not a big difference if I'm making a production quantity of 50 or I'm making a production quantity of 10. 35, 47, there's not a big difference like there was if I'm only doing 1. If I do 5, we'll play around again. Again, it's not a huge difference. It's $62. So imagine every design you're making, you make at least 5 pieces. If you can make 10, so much the better. But if you're making 5, it's a big difference than making 1. I'm going back to the 10 because it's easier maths. And remember, the 10 could be 3 in one color, 3 in another color, and 4 in another. So we end up with a production cost of 47. And here I've put in a wholesale markup of 2 and a retail markup of 2. So the dress that cost me 47, I've sold to the shop at 95, and then I have sold it to the public, or they've sold it to the public. I'll put the orange as 95, and they've sold it to the public at 190. If I change these markups, what happens? So if it was an international buyer, I have to do 2.5 to make sure they're paying for the shipping. And I'm selling it to them at 119. And then they, in their markets where people have more money and more access to credit cards, have marked it up more, and it's become 357. So the dress that cost me around $50, I sold to them at 119, and they sell on at 357. The good thing with this template is you can play around. Let me put it back on the local one, 2 or 2.25 or whatever you want to put it. And then here, let's put 2.25. So these bits, you can play around with a little bit. When it comes to this price, the thing of selling it at 190, or let me just put 230. What is the difference here? The difference is how you're telling your story. As long as the quality is good, and that's important, and the design is original, why shouldn't you charge this to the consumer? Why not? The only thing is, are you telling the story? Are you explaining what it's made of? Are you explaining how it was crafted with love, like it's handcrafted, people using their hands? You know, the hands are very special things. You have your chakras here. You've got energy that you pass through your hands. When you sew, you pull it in different ways. And all the time you're connecting. You're connecting to your mind. You're connecting to your heart. All of these things are the special things that make a garment made with love when it's handmade. If someone is angry and they're sewing, it's going to be a mess. Just like if they're angry and they're cooking, you're not going to like what it tastes like. So try and keep a good atmosphere in your production unit so people are handcrafting with love. And then you tell that story. By the time you've told that story, people aren't even worried about the price. If they don't have enough money, they decide to save up, or they pay a deposit and they come back and they gradually clear. Don't give them the item until they've paid fully. Let them pay bit by bit. It's the same for you. If you really, 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 really want something and you feel it's special, you're going to put your money aside and bit by bit, you're going to buy it. That's what people are doing when they come to you. If they have a credit card, it's easy because they run the card and then they pay the bank slowly. But otherwise, let them pay you slowly. Why not? Just let them gradually pay it off. I hope I've explained things clearly. I'm checking the chat box just in case. The template, yes, we're going to share it in the group. Okay, so if you're starting a retail business in Africa where you're buying ready-made clothes and you're selling them again, I'm not sure about South Africa. It might be different, and maybe Tunisia, Morocco, because I don't know them so well. But in any other place, I would say you would be using ×2 or maximum 2.5, because at least in our markets in Nairobi, where we have quite formal retail, the retailers are not marking up ×3. They mark up less than that. And you can know what the norm is. I'm just looking in the chat box for anything else. On va partager l'Excel après par WhatsApp. Yeah, so again, just to repeat on, if you're calculating with sizes, for the cost, you make sure you use a bigger size, not a smaller size. If you use smaller sizing and smaller pricing, it's going to mean your cost when you get to a bigger size garment is wrong. And if it's the smaller size garment, it will be slightly higher. That's okay. How do you manage to offer the same outfit for Africa and Europe? You don't have to. And that's interesting that Malians want Western fabrics and Westerners want African fabrics. Two different lines. You might actually have them as different brand names. It might be easier to manage that way. Sorry, I think most people are just saying they want the template, and I'm glad that a lot of you seem to have understood what I'm trying to say. So just in the last 3 minutes to explain that the key thing here is the marketing. So if you've got a ×2 markup or a ×3 markup, how are you moving to a higher price? What are you going to say? One good way is, you know, it's my latest collection. All the fabrics are more expensive, or whatever you want to say, or you just say it's my latest collection. The older collection is this price. This is a new collection. That's one way. Another way, as I said, is to invent your board of directors who've told you you have to put your prices up or you'll go out of business. It's dramatic, but it works. Another woman I've mentored who has a tailoring business, she had 5 tailors, and 4 of them were really great, and 1 of them was still learning. So what she did was, the one that was still learning, the price was the same as before, and the ones that were really good, she put all the prices up. So when people came, initially they were like, oh my goodness, your prices, Not all of them, but some of them, they went away, but then they came back again. And in a very few cases, the person really couldn't pay it, at which point she offered them the option of the other tailor who wasn't as good, and therefore she charged less for, because also she was paying him less. So the main thing you have to work on as you work on this is how you tell the story, and just do a transition. Just know your target, know where you're going, and then figure out little by little how you're getting there. One of your goals could be, this time next year, I want to be pricing correctly. So you divide your year up, although for Christmas, you want to have already got it right. Divide your year up, look at the special events in your country. For example, we're in Ramadan, so Eid. That is a time when people will spend more. Wedding season, people spend more. But there may also be festivals, music festivals, when young people want everything. So think about it like that and work on it. And we'll share the template, and yeah, good luck. I hope it goes well. Over to you, Omlabaki.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Please, you can go into the chat box to give your comments and say thank you to Anne-Marie for such a fantastic session. I see that the chat box is really buzzing with a lot of comments on how far and how well the participant has learned in the course of this session. I'm sure that it was a 2-hour worthwhile, and we're grateful to you, Anne-Marie, for the fantastic session. Please, not to worry. The template is going to be shared with you in the chats on WhatsApp. Please, if you are not on WhatsApp, please kindly indicate so that we can share with you the WhatsApp link. If you are not on WhatsApp, my colleague, Tobilola, will share the link for WhatsApp in the WhatsApp link. Please be on the lookout for it. If you need any help whatsoever, please do not hesitate to send us an email on fashionomicshelpdesk@cchub.africa. I'll be more than happy to respond to your questions. Please give me a moment. I'll be sharing the WhatsApp link on the WhatsApp group now, on the chat, so that you can join the WhatsApp group if you are not there yet. Just a moment, please. That's the link in the chat. If you need to join the WhatsApp group, please use that link to join the WhatsApp group in the chat. So for those that have any questions, or there are questions that you are looking forward to asking, please do well to send your questions to Fashionomics Help Desk at cchub.africa, and we'll be sure to cascade your questions to Ms. Anne-Marie for her to respond to you, and we'll share our responses with you as soon as we have them. Thank you very much. Okay, Anne-Marie, some persons are asking for your Instagram account. They want to follow you on Instagram, and yeah, so she has shared that already. So if you want to follow her, please follow her on Instagram for more information and probably more content if you want to follow her closely. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm sure it's a 2 hours well spent. We'll continue again with another session again tomorrow at the same time, but not 2 hours this time around. So please be on the lookout for the link. I'll send it to you on WhatsApp, and then please do well to join. Thank you very much, everyone, and do have an amazing day. We'll catch up on WhatsApp. Buleben Kosi, you said you sent an email to the help desk, no response. Please, can you resend I'm sure that must probably be a mix-up. You get responses on help desk between 24 to 48 hours. Please kindly resend if you have sent a request and has not been responded to. Thank you very much, everyone. Do have an amazing day, and see you again in the chat. See you again on WhatsApp, and see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much, Ms. Anima Creed. We really, really do appreciate you. Okay, so let's hold on a bit before we close the meeting. I can see that comments are still going up in the chat box. You're free to drop off if you don't have any comments. You're free to drop off.